Hi guys, welcome back to our channel Autistic Multiple Life. This channel was created to erase stigma around autism and dissociative identity disorder and other conditions in dissociative spectrum and other type of neurodiversities. And today I want to speak about some sad stuff that's going on in our life. We realize that we have but real depression from I think when we was 13 years old, when this body was 13 years old. Almost permanently with maybe sometimes it was maybe 3 months during summer, during summer holidays in school when we don't have this depression. Sometimes it was maybe half of the year when we moved to St. Petersburg. We started live without our parents, and it was maybe a year and a half during our life in England. Or maybe 2 years, but all this time, most of the time, near 10 years, with all these little powders, like the biggest pause was actually for 2 years, but the little pause for like several months or several weeks. All this time, between these little powders, we have this kind of anxious depression. We don't notice it. We really understand that stuff that in more good normal circumstances could bring us joy, could make us happy, don't make us really happy. We understand that we are tired, we was almost anxious. This depression was part of this kind of our anxiety that was like motive of our life, all this OCD stuff, and our PTSD stuff, and now we realize that this kind of depressed condition, when we was completely restless, we don't want to live, we have this kind of not very strong good emotions, but actually very bad emotions, and kind of thoughts about depressing thoughts, sad thoughts, almost all the time. Was extremely pessimistic, even if it's not part of our personality, because when we wasn't good, well, during this pauses, like 2 years when we don't have depression, we wasn't pessimistic, and we understand what this means in your life. And before we was 13 years old, we have these periods of life when we really understand what it means to enjoy life, what it means to really be happy. But here we just ignore that we have depression because of other mental health conditions like OCD and PTSD. We were thinking that it's just part of OCD. Before we realized that we have OCD, we were thinking that it was just part of our poor will, because our parents was saying that we have poor will and we are possessed by devils. And so we were thinking maybe it's religion stuff, maybe we have this kind of unpleasant feelings. Sometimes these unpleasant emotions were so strong that we really feel dizziness, we really feel sickness, but we were thinking maybe just because of religion stuff, because we are sinful. After that we were thinking that it's all part of OCD. After that we were thinking that it was just kind of, I don't know, kind of because we maybe not good enough and have OCD at the same time. So it was kind of this moral model, and at the same time we were thinking just this is about OCD. But now we realize that OCD is completely different condition. When Alta Verba, who have more strong OCD, started fronting less, and we realize that even this OCD stuff, even this our obsessions with some anxiety about some stuff that's like we were shopaholics, or we want to read the more books that we can and make this big lists about reading, all this perfectionist stuff was kind of protection, so we couldn't notice depression, we couldn't notice how we really feel. Yeah, and when we started to meditate and when we started therapy, we understand that, yeah, it wasn't kind of just part of OCD. it wasn't just our pessimistic thoughts. When we started to have less anxiety, we understand that we have this kind of real depression, and in many ways this depression was because we don't know all these years, we don't know that we are a system, we ignore kind of these needs that our alters have, we ignore their feelings, we have amnesia, that we don't understand that we actually have this amnesia, we have false memories, and we live in a highly unsafe situation in Russia and Ukraine, and in this situation it was just unsafe to us to see the world like it is. So because of all of this, we have depression and anxiety, and this OCD stuff, perfectionist stuff, was kind of protective mechanism. Now we're trying to do something with it. Unfortunately, my depression became stronger after I realized that I don't remember many stuff in my past, but at least now, for example, 2 weeks ago, sometimes it was difficult for me just go from bed. It's unusual because most of the time depression made me restless, not so deeply tired, but I was really deeply tired. And now I started to feel better. I could enjoy some special interests, and before I was thinking that if I could enjoy special interests, it means that I don't have depression. It means that everything's fine with me, even if I couldn't work, I couldn't deal with stuff that most people deal daily. But now I understand, even if you enjoy a special interest, and if you have some moment of joy, if you have this kind of sadness and pessimism and not strong good feeling, and this kind of constant restlessness or constant tiredness, it's not good at all, and you need to speak to your therapist. So please just don't make our mistakes. And yeah, sometimes you could have OCD and depression. It's very, very common situation, and maybe I said extremely, I don't know, banal stuff, because everyone knew that you could have several mental health conditions, and depression is really often became kind of additional condition. Many autistic people and many multiple people, even if I don't think that autism and multiplicity is a disorder or disease, because I don't believe that it's harm me by just like that by themselves, but about because our life not creating for autistic people and not creating for multiple people. Many multiple people and autistic people actually have depression, unfortunately. So yeah, like many LGBT people. So yeah, if you're in this kind of risk group that thinking maybe you have depression, and if you have this feeling that you're not good enough, and if you couldn't manage with many everyday stuff and started to blame yourself, maybe it's not stuff that you need to blame yourself. It's either about your conditions of life, because other different people have different abilities, and or this is because of some mental health stuff. So just don't blame yourself for your problems. Just check what's going on. And I know that sometimes it's scary to realize that you have depression, especially if you realize that you have chronic depression for a long time. But it helps because after you realize that you knew what you need to do. And it's funny that we was having antidepressants for 2 years because of our OCD, and actually our thoughts, this tiredness and restlessness at the same time, it became better. But we was thinking that we just have OCD, not a depression. We realized about depression only when we was going through some tests on depression, thinking about different period of life, and when we found out these memories, that was kind of changed over as it when we realized what was going on in reality. We understand that we have depression all this. Yeah. It's difficult to understand that you have problem, but it's important. Thank you so much for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to make it more visible. See you next time. Bye.